I'm glad at least that this tool has brought diversity and ordinary people's voices into the mix. Look at something like Kony 2012. Whatever the problems that there might be with that, it did prove that the public can rally around an idea and make an idea famous.
But the internet is also awash with contaminated, unsubstantiated toxins that, if you just take them into your system, will mislead you too.
Yes, and every once in a while I feel a need to go on a media fast because the stuff is so toxic that if you pay attention to it, it has to be harming you.
You've done that recently.
I have indeed.
What did you do?
I went to the high desert and I spent a week paying no attention to television or to the internet or to the newspaper, and I didn't have a political conversation.
You were on detox.
I was on a media fast. And by the end, I felt great. The challenge was taking that wisdom of the mountaintop back into the valley of the shadow, which is where we all dwell.
But you had to come back.
I did indeed.
And what happened when you came back and there it all was waiting for you?
It was being exposed to a poison, and I wanted to numb myself the moment that I was exposed to it. It's hard.
How much bad information is too much, Marty? When does it start transforming our brain and our body politic?
I think we're there now. I think there is so much misinformation out there that on issue after issue we have opinions but not facts, and we despair of ever being able to get to the bottom of it and despair of ever having a decision being based on what is accurate, true, and useful, rather than who has the most money to put up enough ads in order to sway the public debate.
You made a very important speech not long ago at a media conference in Barcelona, and you tried and did draw the distinction between, you said the battle of the future is between big data and big democracy. In layman's language, what is that?
Big data, the age of big data that we're supposed to be in, refers to the way in which, as we go on the internet, as we do all these media activities, watching television, which are at the center of our lives, we're leaving a trail behind. We're giving bits of ourselves up, and that set of bits is being collected and mined relentlessly. So every time we buy a product or send an email or vote how many stars to a restaurant, all this stuff creates a profile that companies buy and sell to each other. And that stuff is being used currently not only to market to us, to target ads toward us, but it's also being used to profile us. There's something called weblining, which is similar to what used to be called redlining, that phenomenon which is now illegal, in which people who were discriminated against because of the neighborhoods they live in. Right now,
banks drew a red line around impoverished neighborhoods that they would not then serve.
Exactly. And so today, imagine if you were to permit a private detective to follow you as you went to your drugstore and bought a medication to help you with depression, or as you made a phone call to a bankruptcy lawyer because you needed one. Imagine if that kind of information could be put together and used against you to decide that you're a bad credit risk, or that maybe your insurance company should turn you down because you suffer from this problem. That kind of information, that kind of digital profiling, is something which is emerging as a huge industry. And unless there are controls on it and constraints, as they have to some degree in Europe, but not nearly enough even there, we are about to kiss goodbye our ownership of our privacy, and also even the ownership financially of our information. We are the people who make Facebook and Twitter worth the billions of dollars that they're worth, because we are giving up our information to them, which they are then selling and raising capital around.
But in a libertarian era, what are the restraints and constraints against that? Where are they going to come from?
Well, right now the constraints in this country are voluntary. The Obama White House not long ago issued a digital code of conduct, which included privacy, in which they asked companies, and companies did step up to it, to say, we're not going to track people if they don't want to be tracked, and other such efforts to get people in control. But what we do know, the record of just the past couple of months, is that company after company was doing stuff to us that's astonishing that we didn't know about. The ways in which the apps that you use on your smartphones were vacuuming up information about you, your address book, and all your pictures, stuff that you had no idea you had consented to, which in fact usually you had not, suddenly was all owned by other people as well. You have not given permission, but that essential part of you is now not yours. That's the name of the game now. This is baked into the business model of data mining, which is at the heart of so much of the digital economy.
But that's big data. You talked about big democracy.
So at the same time as our data is being mined, there is this movement to protect people using technology, to give them the power to say, I'm not going to opt into this stuff. We're still at the beginning of this industry, and there have to be rules of the road, and part of those rules include my attention rights, my rights to control my identity, my privacy, and my ownership of information.
In your speech in Barcelona, you pointed to two simultaneous covers of Time magazine appearing the same week. One for the editions in Europe, Asia, and South Pacific, and it was about the crisis in Europe. The other, which appeared in the American edition, featured a cover about animal friendships. You use these two covers to illustrate the difference between what you call push journalism and pull journalism. What's the difference?
Push journalism is the old days, which seem no longer to apply in the era of the internet, in which an editor, a gatekeeper, says, here's the package which you need to know. All of that is ancient history now. Instead, now, it's all driven by what the consumer is pulling. And if the consumer says, I want ice cream all the time, and whether that ice cream is Lindsay Lohan or the latest crime story, that's what's delivered. And as long as it's being pulled, that's what is being provided. So it's quite possible that in the US a calculation was made that the crisis in Europe and the head of Italy would not be a cover that one could use, but that pet friendships would be the sort of thing that would fly off the newsstand.
The reader is determining what we get from the publication.
On a minute-by-minute basis, stories that the reader's interested in immediately go to the top of the homepage. There are actually pieces of software that give editorial prominence to stuff that people, by voting with their clickers, have said is of interest to them. No one is there to intervene and say, wait a minute, that story is just too trivial to occupy more than this small spot below the fold. Instead, the audience's demand is what drives the placement and the importance of journalistic content.
So, George Orwell anticipated the state as Big Brother, hovering over us, watching us, keeping us under surveillance, taking care of our needs as long as we repaid them with utter loyalty. Aldous Huxley anticipated a brave new world in which we were amusing ourselves to death. Who's proving the most successful prophet, Huxley or Orwell?
Well, I think Huxley is probably right, as Neil Postman said in
a sociologist, yes.
In Amusing Ourselves to Death, that there's no business but show business. And we are all equally guilty because it's such fun to be entertained. So you don't need Big Brother because we already have big entertainment.
And the consequences of that?
That we are, as in Brave New World, always in some kind of stupor. We have continual partial attention to everything and tight critical attention on nothing.
Shall we go to the high desert?
I'm ready if you are.
Marty Kaplan, thank you for being with me.
Thank you, Bill.